Today we have an interesting conversation because the government kind of wants you to be poor. It's beneficial to them if you don't really have money. And there are certain things that we see with people that they do that kills their wealth as well.
And I don't know if the government really wants people poor, but they have to inflate the money supply in order to make it a consumer economy. So I think if you understand the rules, then you can play them. But what happens is I felt this way when I was a kid. I don't know about you, but I grew up with my parents saying, save money, save money, save money. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but because there are things you got to save money for. But if you save money for the long term, then it's going to get inflated away, because even the Fed's own website says that their target is 2% inflation. So you can't save money and know that it's going to devalue over time.
Right. So the real problem, though, is that when people acquire this money and they either save it or they spend it, right? So like part of the problem is that they're saving it and it's losing value, and part of the problem is they're spending it, but what they're not doing is they're not investing it. And I think a lot of times, this is like for people's ego, right?
Right.
They need purses or cars or whatever they need to feel better.
That's true. But I think there's 4 things here that we've outlined that will definitely kill your wealth. And they're not big things. That's the interesting thing. It's mostly education, right? Like when you're on a diet, you know that sugar's bad for you, but you either still eat it or you don't. And so you have to know that if you're saving money, it's going to buy you less next year, period. If you just can wrap your head around that.
But I actually like the ones that we picked because you're saying that they should just know. But I actually would argue that, because I would argue our culture has made certain things expected or just part of getting older and going through life and making more money, and that people just do them because that's what their parents did and that's what their grandparents did and that's what their friends are doing. So they just feel like this is the next step for me.
Well, I've watched it evolve because I'm obviously quite a bit older, but I will tell you this. I've watched... people used to work. There used to be one working spouse in the home and one at home. Okay, that's how I grew up. Then, of course, my mom had to start working. She became a hairdresser, but they needed to do that in order to keep up. My dad ended up started working more. So, you go from 40 hours to 50 hours, and my mom was working part-time to full-time. And that all happened while I was a young man. And the reason is not because by the way, my mom still has the same house I grew up in. I was born in this home. Okay, so we didn't jump around. We didn't have bigger houses and bigger cars and more stuff. It was things were going up. And so what's happened before our eyes is now it's expected to have 2 people working full time. That's not the way it was. So I've been able to watch this, over my life, and that's actually where we are. And so if you work 40 hours and you work 50, and then you work 60, and then of course you're fighting for overtime and all that stuff. And now we're talking about side hustles, so it's gone all this way. And I think if people it's hard to realize, like if you're 20 years old or 30 years old, you don't see this. You've seen your parents have always worked 2 jobs. And so now, of course, we're starting to see these handouts from the government and all these other things. And, people are trying to get reparations and all these things are starting to come out. It's the end result of all of it is that they don't have enough. They're struggling. They're struggling with rent. They're struggling with mortgage payments. They're struggling with food. They're struggling with gas. They can't buy new cars. Like, that's what this is all about. And you guys, if you back away from it and you understand why, then you can start to make really good choices.
Well, and I think that's interesting, right? Because if you go back to, probably the 50s or somewhere around there, one income could get you a house. It could get you 1 car. You only really need 1 car, only 1 person working. It could get you just a nice middle-class lifestyle, right? And then kind of the era that I grew up in, if you had 2 people working, you could have a nice middle-class lifestyle, right? You could have, a decent house, a car, all the 2 cars, all those things. Now you're having 2 people working, but they're struggling to even maintain a middle-class lifestyle. Like, they can't buy a house. They are probably have car payments or they're leasing their car. So it's very different. Every generation, it's been very different
from
the previous generation.
Right. And then, so why is that, guys? There's a reason. So if you look at the common thread here, it's because things have gone up. Now, I've told this story before. When my dad passed away, which was a horrible time for me, I had to dig into their finances. As a child, you just don't talk to your parents about that stuff, right? So now okay, Mom, how much savings do you have? And do you have any insurance? And all those kinds of things. That's not a normal thing for a kid to ask their parents. Well, I dug in. So my dad used to talk about this insurance policy that he had for my mom. And he bought it years ago. And he's like, your mom's covered. He was thinking about this, which was cool. Well, guess what? That insurance policy was $10,000.
Right.
And it didn't adjust with inflation. So he bought an insurance policy. He, in his mind, thought it would be fine to take care of my mom. I just wrote my mom a check today, for her expenses for the year. I'm happy to do it. Thank God I'm in a position for that. The reality is that's horrible. Because the financial industry, the financial services industry, is preying on people with these financial products. You got to really understand that everything's tied to inflation. If that would have been tied to inflation, would have been in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
It would have been a serious difference, but it wasn't. And same thing with $10,000 in cash. If you have $10,000 in cash 10 years ago and you have $10,000 in cash today, buying you less. That's all you have to know. Your money is getting eroded over time through inflation. Sometimes it's worse. Sometimes it's under control. Sometimes it's not. And of course, it's confusing. And a lot of people just look at the gas pump, but that's not all you should look at. Even your groceries. Danielle's one of these people where she pretends like she's got all these choices when she goes to this grocery store because it has all these choices. But what she does is she walks up and down the aisle with her cart. I've been with her plenty of times. And she looks around as if she's going to buy something new. But no, she buys the exact same things every time. It goes in the exact same cart every time. And so the interesting thing about that is that we also know from week to week, month to month, what's going on with groceries, right? That's why you talk about.
I'm very in tune with my grocery bill.
Yeah, so all right. So talk about your grocery bill.
Well, it's still going up. I mean, they might tell you that inflation's done and, we're solving it. But, obviously during that 2020 to 2022 period, it went up a lot. I would say it over doubled personally for my groceries. But even still, it's still increasing. I still order groceries twice a week. And, obviously it's a little different each time, but overall it's still going. And I know this is affecting everybody because everybody has to buy groceries. So, and when you have a family of 5, I don't even know how you do it because so significantly for just the 2 of us, let alone 5 people. I definitely noticed that. And I noticed it just in food is the number one thing. Gas is tending to be fluctuating, been a little bit down, but I do think that this might be from the election and this is being recorded the Monday before the election. So I feel in the next few months, it might go up because I feel they like to do that. They like to suppress the price of gas before the elections.
Could be. Well, this morning you text me, you took your car in for service, by the way.
Yeah.
First time in a year. Brought it in and you text me. How much was it?
$1,400.
Right. She's like, is this right? You had a sticker shock.
Yeah, I did have a sticker shock. I was like, wow, that was expensive. My thought, did I really need this service? And could I have postponed it?
Well, okay.
Because if I postpone it for 6 months or whatever, and I'm sure people all around the country are doing this, if I can postpone it for 6 months, that is less time before I have to bring it in again.
You got it. So this is exactly why I brought this up. Because you could afford this, but what about the people that can't?
Right.
And obviously she got a new car after a long time of having this beat up Honda Accord, right? So it's cool that you have a new car. By the way, guess what? It's new. What? It's filters, it's oil changes, it's rotating the tires. It's so basic. $1,400. I'm like, she texts me. By the way, I was at the gym, so I didn't have time to chat with her. But so that's being done right now. And so the question, she's like, where can I get it done for less? This is what you guys, or can I kick this down the road?
Right. Can I kick it down the road? And I think a lot of people, we're seeing this in Florida with the home insurance. We talked about that, right? People not having insurance. And interestingly enough, a friend of mine that's up in Prescott, her parents' house just burned down this weekend, unfortunately, but they didn't have any home insurance.
Oh,
they
no.
cut But it's because people are cutting back. They needed to cut back, and they thought nothing's ever probably going to happen with my house. Just like I was kind of thinking with my car, if I wait 6 months, is anything really going to happen with it? You know what I mean? And because things are so tight right now that it's just indiscretionary spending, you're kind of looking at where can I cut, because you can't stop eating. You need gas. Like there's certain things you just can't cut out. And then there's other things that you can kick down the road. And I've seen a ton of cars with damage. Like I've pointed that out to you.
That's a
There's
really good
so
point.
many cars
you
with
guys
damage.
Start looking around. You're going to start to see dents. I am too.
Yeah.
Like there are people that have like fender benders and they're driving these cars around now because guess what? It's expensive.
Expensive to fix, well, including me.
Oh my gosh, let's talk about that. Danielle's like rubbernecking. She's pulling into our neighborhood, and she's looking to the right while she's turning left. First of all, I just want you to stop and understand that she's looking to the right when she's pulling left.
There was an accident. I was staring at it.
And then boom,
hey,
runs into like this rock.
No, it was a cement wall that they put up in front of the code thing to get into the neighborhood. So no one would hit
they
it.
put it up because of Danielle. So we should put a plaque on it. Like I was like, so anyway, boom, she hits it. And I look at it and I'm like, oh no.
Well, you know, girl code. I was like, I hope that didn't do any damage. Just I'm backing away before I get to the house to look and see.
Is that girl code? What is girl code?
Like we all ladies, you know, when you get in an accident, you hit something, you're like, ooh, I hope that didn't do any damage. And sometimes it doesn't.
Meanwhile, anyway, but to your point, I said, just turn it over to the insurance company. So she did. And then she called them and said, no, I don't know. When's the last time you guys told somebody to come over at 5:50, but you don't actually know what they're going to do?
Well,
so this whole thing's been interesting. But I guess back to the point. The point is, Danielle's got a little fender bump turning left while she was looking right. And she's actually thinking she's going to keep it as is. She's like, oh, I'm just going to drive around like this. I'm like, no, you got to get it fixed.
See, this is where my frugalness comes in, and I don't want to like fix it because it's going to be expensive. But I do think that this 550 option is going to be a good option.
Well, we'll see. But the point is this. There are people that have stuff. They need tires. They have engine repairs. They have engine lights on. They have damage. This is when people are going to start not buy new cars, right?
Right.
So you got to wonder, the new car business is really getting clobbered right now for not only that reason, but also mortgage rates. I was talking to my friend Tarl Yarber. He came in this weekend because he's my partner in Limitless, and it was really nice of him to fly in from Austin, and we spent all day Friday, all day Saturday going over Limitless, for next year and kind of a download for last year. But he's in the single family business. And he said, listen to this. The home builders, people that are trying to sell homes are actually spending $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to buy down interest rates. I want you to wrap your head around this. Now, I know I'm going off topic a little bit. If you build a home and there's $100,000 of profit, which is really high, I don't even know if that's high, the builder might have to spend 30 or 40 grand to buy down that rate so that a homeowner they'll have a rate in the 5. And so that's a cost of the home builder. Maybe they're pushing that back through somehow, who knows? But at the end of the day, this is an interesting time because things are going up. Prices are going up.
When I was just looking, the car sales that you were just mentioning are down 15 to 25%, depending on the dealership reporting.
So if you guys are, let's say you're in the used car business or the car business, and you now have 15 to 25% less sales, that means you have 15 to 25% less income. That means, prudently, you should have 15 to 25% less overhead, which is people. Your property taxes, you're not going to reduce your utilities, so you're going to have to reduce people. So that's why you're also starting to see service business problems, right? Mm-hmm. So when you call and you can't get a hold of somebody, or you walk in somewhere and there's nobody to help you, or in the restaurants, people are stressed out. Somebody's trying to juggle all these tables because they got one person working. This is the result. Mm-hmm. And this is what people are starting to see. The employers have to cut back.
Right.
They have to. It's not only affecting the individual, but it's affecting the employers, because employers, there's no reason to run a business for free. The whole point of running a business is to make it a profitable business.
But there's also, no need for that many people if your sales are down. I mean, if you have less sales, you need less service people, you need less salespeople, you need less, customer service people because you don't have as many people coming in.
But I love how they're doing the unemployment numbers. They're reporting them and then they're adjusting them later.
I know.
Like, I don't know if everybody's caught on to that, but I don't know. You guys just got to look. Go look at the adjustments. There was an 818,000 person employee adjustment. 818,000 people downward, by the way, of course. Think of that.
Yeah, of course, down, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think, the question is, whether or not we're going into a recession, right? And it's debatable. And some of it definitely has to do with who wins the election this week. But either way, you guys should prepare that we might be, right? So you should prepare with your mindset, your job, what you're spending money on, that we might be moving in that direction.
But I think, what are some real basic things that we can all do? The one thing that I just plead with you guys, buy things that move with inflation. That's it. It doesn't have to be real estate. Just buy things that move with inflation. You guys, just take a look at what's going on with gold and silver. You used to be able to buy gold in the 20s. Now it's in the 30s. So you used to be able to buy silver in the 20s, and now it's in the 30s. Some are saying it could go up into the 40s. Same thing with gold. You could buy it in the 1500s. I mean, I know Robert Kiyosaki's been buying way before that, but I started buying in the, when I was in the teens, let's say, or 1100, 1200, 13, in that area. Now it's in the 27, 2800. Now, why is that? Because you can't print gold. You can't print silver. You can't print lumber. You can't print oil. Like, you have to take a look at things that are hard assets.
The question is, can you print Bitcoin?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a dicey one. But yeah, and why is Bitcoin going up? It's because people don't trust the dollar, and so they're trying to invest in alternative things. And to be honest, Bitcoin's been great that way. We know people. What is it? It's over 70 now, right? 70,
yeah, I think
000.
it was at 68 this morning.
So I think, here's the thing. Like, if you're sitting on savings and that it's, they're printing away and funding wars and funding all these different things and funding the middle class and immigration and funding all these things, they're spending money on that and your dollars are getting eroded. You should be looking for ways. And that's why silver's going up. That's why gold's going up. That's why Bitcoin's going up, because people don't trust the government and they don't trust the US dollar.
Yeah. And that's why those things are going up. But then the reason that real estate's going up is because it just moves with inflation.
Correct.
Right? So rents move with inflation, home prices move with inflation. Can you explain why?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, I've been buying real estate forever, as you guys know. There was a time where we were building apartments in the 100,000s per unit range, right? And then we were like, oh my gosh, it's pushing up to 200. Mm-hmm. Right. So for really nice brand new apartments. So it went in the ones, and then now it went into the twos. Now it's in the threes. Cannot build an apartment building for less than 300,000. By the way, same land, 2x4s or more, drywall's more, labor's more, plumbing equipment's more, faucets are more, sinks are more, washers and dryers are more, everything's more. As all those little things that affect all of you, it's pushing the prices up. When those commodities get pushed up, then of course, so what you should be looking at, some of the best real estate deals right now are the ones where you can buy below replacement cost. If you're going to build a house similar next door and it's, let's say, 300,000 and you can buy one in the neighborhood for 200, you're better off buying the 200. That's always been that way though, even when it was back at 100 to 200. Real estate does traditionally move with inflation. Now, it can be pricing go up and down based on population growth, employment growth, and of course, how many the supply is in the area. If you drop a whole bunch of homes in an area, the prices are going to drop.
But I do feel like, everyone says, oh, we need affordable housing, but we can't really have quote unquote affordable housing because we can't build housing affordably.
You can't. No, and that's why the government needs to step in. And that's why we've been doing these videos on zoning and all these things. So the way zoning works is there's a zoning maps typically for neighborhoods or submarkets or areas, let's say. And so that's why you'll see an industrial area, or all the downtown buildings will be like in a downtown. See, in neighborhoods, they're all kind of cookie cutter, and that's because of zoning. Most neighborhoods don't want an apartment building across the street, let's say, okay, because that's different kinds of zoning. That's called high density residential zoning. You have low density residential, and then you have farmland and all that. Those are all zoning. The government's relaxed zoning and allowed people to build affordable housing, because land's a huge piece of the cost, right?
Yeah.
What's not going to change? The cost of a 2x4, the
Right.
cost of drywall. But what, if you can make it easier to build, or you can build more in one location, you start to see these in cities where things become unaffordable. So when you start to see cities go up as opposed to sideways, so you call it vertical versus horizontal, that's when you start to think of New York, think of some of these downtowns. And, of course, Manhattan is an island, which most people probably know. When it reached the edges, it was a certain price, and then it has to go up. And in New York, what you want and what people battle for are what's called the air rights. So you could buy an 8-story apartment building, but you might be able to go 30, 40 stories. So what you do is you buy the air rights above the. That's what happens when you start to see unaffordability, right? And they start to go up. And we've seen that before our eyes. We've seen that in a lot of markets.
Yeah. So the reason that we wanted to bring up inflation and kind of explain to you what is going on is because there's certain things that the past generation did. Because you can look at the boomer generation and, they're holding most of the wealth right now. Like they own their own houses, they own rentals, they don't have much debt compared to, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z, right? And every generation, it kind of gets worse, with millennials and Gen Z being at the bottom of that. And so you might look at your parents and you might say, well, they did a whole bunch of things, and then now they're retired, they're good, they're living the good life, so I'm going to follow their exact trajectory. And the problem with that is they didn't have the situation that we have now. Their wages kept up better with inflation. They did have some inflation in the 70s, but they were able to overcome it because there was strong job growth. And like I said, their wages kept up. They were able to buy a house. They were able to do all of these things. So we're going to kind of be real with you on decisions that you shouldn't make now, or that your kids shouldn't make now, even if you made those same decisions, because it's not a good decision anymore based on the current situation.
Yeah, like things like new car versus used car.
Yeah, I mean, the average new car payment is $750 a month. Average.
That's insane.
And a used car right now is $550 average.
I remember when that used to be like an exotic.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to spend $750 a month for a Ferrari.
Well, right.
Right? No, seriously, guys. As you guys, I've owned Ferraris. I will tell you that is a lot of money for the average person.
It's a lot of money. I know this is a long time ago, but I remember my friend got a BMW, and I was like, "How much is your car payment?" And he was like, "It's $500," and I was like, $500? Like mine was like $175 or something, right? And yes, wages have went up since then. They have not went up
Like
3.5 times the amount. You know what I mean? And so the fact that, people are paying $750 for a car plus the down payment, right? And then $550 for a used car, like you really got to evaluate your car decision.
Yeah, and then to mention, we talked about maintenance. Like you brought yours in today.
Yep.
$1,400
just for some routine stuff.
Just for filters, oil change,
tire
rotation. You guys, we haven't even tapped insurance. Holy cow. Insurance is getting clobbered right now.
Well, and that's the thing. You get a nicer car, you have nicer repairs, you have more expensive repairs, you have more expensive insurance, you have more expensive everything. And in fact, it was funny because I was just talking to my girlfriend today, and she used to have an expensive car, and she goes, "That was the worst mistake I ever made." She goes, "I was trying to think I could afford this car, and I kind of stretched for it." She goes, "Then all the service and all of the repairs," and she had a Lemon, so she had a bunch of stuff. I sold that thing, and I was so relieved. And she sold it for a loss, right? But it's that ego coming in of like, oh, I want a really nice car, even though I'm stretching for it. But to your point, you have to factor in the entire cost of that car.
Yeah, let me tell you guys something. Nobody's watching. Nobody cares what you're driving. Only you projecting out. Seriously. And if they do, you got to lose them anyway.
Well, and so this is what I was going to say. Certain people do care, okay? Like when I was driving around my beat-up Honda, I talk about this. I was making pretty good money. I did not sell my car. I was driving this beat-up Honda. But I just didn't care because I knew that what I was saving up for was a condo. And my car was still working. It worked fine. It was great. Hondas are great. It just was the exterior was really beat up. But people, if you want to ever retire and you ever want to get out of the rat race that you're in, If you buy a new car and you can't afford to do that, or you have other savings goals, it's a huge waste of your money. Now, if you get to the point where you're, set, you've met all your financial goals or, everything else, and you can afford a new car, then you should get one, right? We're not talking about that. We're talking about people that are stretching themselves because they feel like it's going to help their ego and they don't want to be driving around a car that they're not proud of. But you have to realize how much this is going to set you back.
Well, the other thing is, guys, if you were envisioning little Honda that Danielle had was in really good condition, please listen up, okay? Because you had at least 17 dents in that thing.
I know. I had a lot of dents in it. I remember one time I took it to this car wash, which I never washed it. I don't even know what I was doing. And
that should tell you something.
And this random guy, he was like, oh, we could probably get these dents out. And I actually was debating. So I'm like, I don't even know if I care that they're in there. But I said, sure, see what you can do. And he actually was able to get a few of the dents out and a few of the scuffs out. But, it was less stressful that way because then when I ran into a wall, it was just another dent.
Wait a second. That's just not a normal comment. So, guys, when we met, I was like, this is straight out of a demolition derby.
But I had that car for a long time. And I think that's the important part is that everyone, as soon as you start making a little bit of money, first thing that people tell you to do is buy a new car. Like the first thing people tell you to do, you should get a nicer car. Why are you driving around that piece of crap car? You need to get a better car. But at the end of the day, are you taking your raise that you just got or your new position you just got and then spending the difference on a car?
That's a really, really good point. So just be cognizant. And I'm busting on Danielle, but I did the same thing when I was younger. I had a Volkswagen Scirocco. I drove the wheels off of that thing. It was great. And I didn't have a car payment for the longest time when I was socking money away. I was putting money in my savings account. And back then when I thought I needed a savings account, which you do, but you don't. I didn't understand inflation, all that stuff during that period of time. Why give up several $100 more a month? That in some cases even more than that, just because you want the newest and greatest car.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and the next one, let's talk about college debt.
Ooh, this is a dicey one.
This is, it's supposed to be forgiven, then not forgiven, and who knows? Like we got an election.
Yeah, never bank on the government.
We will see what's going to happen with that. But I think beyond the debt, let's go back before that. Let's talk about the value. Like 37% of millennials regret going to college.
Well, so before we talk about the value, let's start at your generation and what college is for your generation.
That's a good point. I went to a school for wrestling. So for me, that's probably the only reason I went to college. But even then, that college was kind of expensive. I remember it was a private college. It was the state colleges were less. My scholarship didn't include everything, so I did have to get some student loans. But I also remember those were low.
Hold on, I have to pull this for you.
What?
So I don't know the exact year you went to college, but my guess is around 80, 81.
No, it was 80s.
Okay, so the tuition was with room and board at Pacific Lutheran was $3,000 to $3,500 a year.
I just remember it being like $1 million. I do remember because listen, this is the truth. My little Scirocco I was telling you about, there's a lower campus and upper campus. I ran out of gas on upper campus. That's how tight I was, right? I looked in my, you always used to throw all your change in the ashtray. I had like $3 in change in the ashtray. And I had to go get a gas can full of gas. That's how tight I was. So $3,000 or $4,000 or whatever it was at that time, that's a lot.
Well, and if you just look at that same school today without room and board, so that your $3,000 to $3,500 was also for room and board. Now it's $25,000 a year. Yeah. So that's part of this conversation. So go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, but I will tell you also, for me, college made sense. I probably would have gone to work for Boeing or for Weyerhaeuser or Scott Paper, which was in my town. I had a lot of friends from high school go straight into, not that those are bad places, but I probably would have been on some assembly line or something. Who knows? Who knows what I would have done. But the reality is I would have probably not moved, and I probably would have got gobbled up into, just the blue collar scene. Thankfully, college did give me a shift of perspective, but I will tell you, it's changed a little bit. Now, it's gotten a lot more expensive. These kids are just signing off on these really expensive student loans, and they're getting out of school where they have $400,000. They have $300,000 or $400,000 in debt. They don't understand money, so they're trying to figure out, how do I pay this back?
I think that's what you have to look for if you're debating going to college or, because I know with my generation, so I'm a millennial. To Ken's point, 37% of millennials regret going to college. That's almost 2 out of 5. Tell you that I'm in that 37%. For me, I had fun in college. I don't regret those memories that I made, but the money that I spent and
here's what I didn't hear. I was educated in college.
Yeah,
you had fun in college.
Fun.
Okay,
I had fun, and I did learn a lot, and I was a really good student, because as you know,
backtrack.
Honors.
Her dad's listening.
But the thing is that my degree was a lot cheaper than even a degree now. I want to say that we paid about $40,000 total for my college. But
for all 4 years?
For all 4 years. But I was a teacher, so I only was going to be making $30,000 a year in Arizona out of school. So the math just doesn't make any sense, right? I could have went and worked a normal job without a degree and probably made about the same amount of money. So I think if you're going to decide that you're going to go to college or you're not going to go to college, it has to be two things. One, mainly, what's your degree? Like, are you going to be an engineer? Because that's going to pay a lot more money. That's going to make a lot more sense. Are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be an attorney? Are you going to be a teacher? Because that probably doesn't make sense. And even Arizona now, I think you can even teach without a teaching degree because they're so desperate for teachers because they don't make any money. Are you going to be a social worker, right? Like my girlfriend got her social work degree, was the only person I knew making less than me. And, she was hired with people that didn't have degrees.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I was going to bring that up, because we know plenty of people that have gone into that. And God bless you, by the way, because that is a huge need, but it doesn't pay that great, right? I was talking to one young person, and they're like, I'm going to be a social worker, and I'm going to start a nonprofit, right?
Yeah.
And I love that fact that that's where their head is. But meanwhile, their parents have dropped over $200,000 on their college education. You're spending this kind of money, whether it's yours, whether you're financing, whether it's your parents. Obviously, it's much easier if you have rich parents to be able to pay for this. But the reality is you have to look at the return.
Yeah. And if you have kids, it's up to you to make them understand this, because this is what we hear when we talk to a lot of kids is that, they can't buy a house because they have college debt. You know what I mean? Like their debt to income is off and they can't even purchase their own home. Or like we have people even in this office that stress out about their payments for school. And they were so thankful and relieved when those were paused, but they just started back up again.
Yeah.
And, we've had people in this office crying about it, right? Yep. I mean, these are real loans that are really expensive. A lot of them are variable. And so you really have to think with your kid, does this make sense for my kid? I'm not saying nobody should go to college, but you can't. For my generation, it was like, if you didn't go to college, you're kind of a loser. I mean, that was kind of the sentiment around the school. I mean, the guidance counselor would talk to you. I was like a C student in high school. So probably shouldn't even have went to college. But now I think people are being more astute because college has gotten so much more expensive does this actually even make sense? And if you're going to pay for college for your kid and there might not make any sense and you have the money, is there something different you can do with that money, like help them start a business, help them buy a home? Maybe there's some kind of tech program, or what do they call that, like a blue collar program that might be better for them. I mean, don't just do something because it's always been done. Really think about it.
And I want to be clear here. I'm not against education. In fact, hopefully you guys are. I read every morning. I watch YouTube videos. I go to conferences. Obviously, I'm doing everything I can to educate myself. We study the heck out of markets, and so I'm continually being educated. The question is, a $200,000 investment with a $30,000 annual payoff worth it?
Right.
That's the question. And can that money, I'm not saying even not to even spend it. I'm saying, can that money be reallocated in a way that you actually are better educated? This is not whether or not you go to college. This is about what do you learn there, and is it applicable out in society? And the world is going to tell you very quickly once your mommy and daddy are gone.
I shouldn't say Ken and I, but my family feels very differently than I do in this, with this whole debt forgiveness and everything else. I think if they were going to lower the price of school and make it affordable, that they should forgive everybody's debt. But the problem is they're not. So if they forgive it, then kids at 18 years old do not understand real life. So they have no concept of the money that they're taking on in debt. And you can try to tell them, but they just don't understand it. We were talking to, remember we had asked the kids what salary they thought they were going to make when they graduated, and then how much tax that they thought they were going to pay. And literally, they thought they were going to make $80,000 out of the gate, and they thought their tax bill would be right around $500 for the year.
I know.
And they really thought that because as a kid, you have, even as an 18-year-old, you really don't know. You don't know what rent is. You don't know how to allocate your expenses. You just don't understand it. So that's why it's up to you to educate your kids before they take on this large loan.
The other thing that I just would want to wrap up on this issue is, who are your teachers? Let me say that again. Who are your teachers? When you drop into a school, who are your teachers? If you're trying to learn a trade, do you want to learn somebody who understands and has done the trade? Or do you want to learn from somebody who's just reading out of a book? You got to really take a hard look at that, right? Like, if you're going to learn something, you want to learn it from people that are actually doing it. That's why mentorships and coaching and some of the associations and these network groups and these other things are super important. Like, if you want to learn how to play golf, you got to actually play golf. If you want to learn from somebody who knows how to play golf, you actually want to listen to somebody who has played golf, not somebody who's reading it out of a book. Who are your teachers? And this is an important piece. So you don't have to go to college in order to find these things, right? Especially now with YouTube out there. There's so many ways to learn. I mean, it's actually leveling the playing field, which is awesome. There's no excuse right now for you guys not to at least find some people out that you can listen to and you can build your business on. One of our young kids, Josh, who's, what is he, 22 now? You know, he dropped out of high school and he's now like doing these incredible YouTube videos, all learned from YouTube. And he's got a nice little business that he's creating. And now he's trying to figure out how to scale it and how to manage it, you know, which he sucks at. He's learning and he's asking me questions and he's looking online. He's trying to figure this out. But one thing he's really good at is YouTube. And guess what? He's in demand. People want him because he understands it. And so, you know, he now has a great skill. He's getting better and better and better. And, you know, I'll tell you what, this young kid, he's going to do very well financially in his lifetime. He's in the right rooms and he's asking the right questions and he knows he's not great at everything. Point is, though, he completely bypassed the system.
Absolutely. And then I think the next thing we want to touch on is just expensive items, right? And I'd say this generation, so it's interesting with this generation, like they're very into that stuff because of Instagram and all the social media. But then at the same time, I think that they're also probably a little bit better of, they don't have the money to spend on it, to be honest.
Yeah, there's one rule of thumb here, and just don't put it on a credit card, you know. And if you do, there's nothing wrong with getting points or something, but just pay it off every month. Credit card balances will kill you. You know, now we're well into the over $1 trillion in credit card debt. So we've seen personal savings go down to all-time lows, and we've seen credit card debt go up to all-time highs. There's all kinds of reasons for that, but you know, clothes, watches, purses, jewelries, vacations, all that kind of stuff. I just had dinner with a good friend of mine who was on a 3-week vacation, and he saved all year. He has his little buckets.
Well, and this friend is not a friend that, I mean, he's an average middle-class guy.
Correct. And I'm like, good. He had a number in mind. He pre-planned it 3 weeks through Europe. He saved all year. And so he had like a travel account, and that's the money he used to go travel. He never put it on a credit card or anything like that. He didn't go backward. We're in a society right now where people window shop, you know, they go online and they order stuff. That's not what he does. That's the right thing to do. You know, and I asked him, he's like, he wants to invest in one of our projects.
Oh, interesting.
And I was like, and by the way, he does not make a ton, but he's super diligent on the way he's managing his money, and he's putting it in the right place, and his money is working for him. So he's not also cutting way back on his lifestyle.
Right.
He's doing the things he wants.
So the last thing, and this is a big one, I think, too, your home, right? So we always want people to buy a home, and we always say you should own a home. Right now, more than half of home buyers in the last 4 years have buyer's remorse.
Well, yeah, they are. I mean, think about it.
But it's very similar to a car, right? You talk to your realtor and you figure out what you can afford, and then maybe you stretch a little more because you can kind of like afford it. It's just going to be tight. Problem with doing that, you have insurance, you have home repairs, you have home maintenance. It's just like a car. It costs more than you think it's going to cost. This is kind of a newer thing because like your parents' generation, they bought a home, and like I know my parents bought 3 houses. Like we bought a home, lived in it for a few years, upgraded, then did the same thing and upgraded. But now that we're on tighter budgets, you have to think, does it make sense to upgrade your home once you buy one? And if you're looking to buy a home, does it make sense to max out your budget? Or do you want to buy something so that you're not house poor and you have additional money and just stay there? And instead of upgrading your house, just be able to afford, save, invest in other rentals.
Yeah, that's one strategy. And I also know people that are actually going into rentals and just renting. And of course, that's not building wealth, but you have a friend that was showing a condo, they divorced, and she just signed a lease and awesome, got 2 months free.
She did, and she got a pretty good rate on the apartment. I just think that, because so my brother's kind of in this position, right? Like he owns his home, it's paid off. It's tight though, because he has a 3-bedroom, they have 4 kids. It's tight, and they've looked at upgrading their house, but the problem is they'd be taking on such a bigger mortgage payment to do that.
This is the used car, new car scenario.
It is. They'd be taking such a big jump, and it would affect their lifestyle because right now they're very comfortable. He has 4 kids. His wife doesn't work. They're very comfortable.
Yep.
But if they take on this new payment, things all of a sudden get tight. So they're at the moment kind of remodeling their current house, making it a little nicer.
But let's talk about real quick before we go down that road. If they take on a new payment, things get tight. What will your brother do? And he'll work more.
Yep.
Okay.
Well,
that's actually the issue.
Yep. And he'll probably have to potentially take a job that he likes less because it pays better.
His lifestyle will change and he won't be around his family as much. And so that's actually that's why I wanted to bring that up, is because that's where a lot of people are at right now.
Well, and I think it's, Rogan talks about this, as I love listening to Rogan, but he said, he upgraded his house when he was younger. He started making all this money in Hollywood, so he upgraded his house. And then he goes, and after like a couple months, like I just didn't care. It was just a house. It was just a place for me to sleep and hang out and leave. And so like that fresh feeling, just like buying a new car, it can kind of wear off, right? So you have to think about, is it worth it? Is it worth doing that? Like, what are you sacrificing, whether it's working more or not being able to retire as early because you're buying a new house instead of investing in rental properties? Like, what are you giving up to have this house?
Yeah, don't be house poor, guys. You're not supposed to have stress on your car payment. You're not supposed to have stress on your mortgage payment. If you can adjust your lifestyle just a bit, I'm not saying compromise, but think through what you're spending money on, and do what's right. Solve to comfort, right?
Well, solve, because we always say, it's when you're wealthy, it's not the stuff you have, right? Like some people might be like, oh, I'm so jealous of you. You have a really nice car. But really what people aspire is they aspire to have time and freedom and flexibility and the ability to not work, or the ability to work a job that they love that maybe doesn't pay as much as another job, right? So that's what you want to aspire to. So you have to look at all these decisions and say, is this moving me in the direction that I'm going to have financial freedom, or is this moving me in the direction that it's going to make, be a hamster wheel, and I'm going to have to keep doing what I'm doing right now?
Yep. And as always, guys, I appreciate you listening.
Well, because right now, if you're in your 20s and 30s, you're probably working your butt off. You're probably paycheck to paycheck. You're probably super tight. It's a fun time of life in certain ways, but financially, it's a stressful time for most people. Do you want to continue doing that in your 40s, 50s, and 60s, or do you want to start getting some relief from that? And I think that kind of correlates back to that financial freedom. And I'm 41, and I have friends now on both sides of that equation. Some of my friends are in a very good position. They're comfortable. They're not working, or maybe they're just working part-time. I have other friends that are grinding away, working 3 jobs. And these are all decisions that they made in their 20s and 30s. We all started at the same spot.
I will tell you guys, time is not your friend. You actually have to really think this through. What is it you want? What are you spending your money on? And is your money working for you, or are you using credit to erode where you stand? That's what you have to look at. And you're either moving forward or you're moving back. And most people right now, especially with inflation And with the prices that we're starting to see things, this is the time where you really, really need to take note, draw a line in the sand and say, I'm going to make these decisions and stick with them and be disciplined. Because if you do that, you'll come out on the right side.
Awesome. We'll see you guys next week.